My new work has been released. Welcome everyone to read my work in tomato novel. I hope everyone can enjoy it. Your attention is the driving force behind my writing, and I will strive to tell every story well. Chapter 1. Countdown to the End. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In a spacious office, Qingyan was organizing his completed report and muttering to himself, "Finally done, I've received the performance bonus for this quarter." After work, Qingyan had a simple dinner and returned home. The overtime during this period was a bit tiring. He took a good shower and leaned on the sofa, watching sports news on TV. He thought that the National Amateur Triathlon competition at the end of the month would start and needed to adjust his state. Last year, we finished second by a small margin, and this year we must win the championship. Qingyan is a project manager at a law firm, who can be considered a white-collar worker. With a relatively generous salary, he leads a free and single life. My favorite thing in my spare time is to participate in various extreme activities to challenge myself. In recent years, I have fallen in love with triathlon, and years of sports experience have laid a good foundation for him. Soon, I achieved some results in this sport. As he was thinking about it, his phone rang and he saw that it was his own little friend, Gongzi. "Gongzi, what's up?" Gongzi listened loudly and said, "Today, my friend made a small sum of money. Come and have a drink." Qingyan smiled and guessed that this kid was going to let him go again. He boasted and said, "I won't drink anymore. There will be a competition in a few days, so I'll come over there." As a result, I was still drugged into a dog at night and fell asleep when I got home. Just as Qingyan was sleeping, a bright light suddenly appeared in the sky not far from his home and rushed straight into his mind, disappearing without a trace in an instant. The next morning, Qingyan had just woken up, his head still drowsy and his throat dry. After drinking a glass of water, he slowly regained consciousness. Suddenly, Qingyan noticed something was wrong. In his field of vision, there was a strange icon floating in front of him. Curiously, he touched it with his hand, and the icon unfolded to form a virtual light screen similar to a game interface. Seeing this, Qingyan's eyes gradually brightened. "Is this my golden finger?" But soon he realized that except for something in the upper right corner of the light screen that seemed to count down, he couldn't see anything else. Just as he focused his attention on the countdown, a window popped up. It was discovered that there were still 71 hours and 52 minutes left for the apocalyptic zombie virus to descend on Earth. Please prepare for the apocalypse. Seeing this, Qingyan's gleam in his eyes gradually turned into terror. If this golden finger is true, there is a high probability that this countdown to the end of the world is also true. For a while, Qingyan sat on the bed in confusion. After a while, as the number on the countdown slowly jumped, with a sudden jolt, Qingyan woke up and said, "We can't waste time anymore. There are still many things to prepare in less than 3 days." He picked up his pen and paper. Qingyan began to write down the things to prepare, the most important being food and water, followed by weapons and medicine, and then mobile tools and daily necessities. After Qingyan listed these one by one, he drove straight to the supermarket without stopping. Arriving at the entrance of the largest supermarket nearby, Qingyan took a deep breath and walked in. First, there were various canned meat, compressed biscuits, 2 bags of rice, 10 boxes of pure water, and after thinking for a while, he also brought a lot of instant noodles and high-energy snacks such as various chocolates. Finally, he bought some tools and knives, and spent several thousand yuan on them. Feeling the foolishness of the people around him, Qingyan paid no attention. After negotiating with the supermarket staff to deliver it directly to his home, Qingyan rushed non-stop to several large pharmacies nearby, buying various daily medicines, a large amount of gauze and medical alcohol, and buying 2 whole big bags. After putting the medicine on the car, Qingyan slowly drove along the street, his eyes constantly searching for something. After a while, he parked the car on the roadside and walked into a shop for outdoor enthusiasts. Qingyan can barely be considered an old customer here. The boss's surname is Li, and he has been operating here for more than 10 years. When he saw Chen Yi, he smiled and said, "Mr. Chen, what do you want to buy?" Chen Ye's mind was full of preparing supplies, and he reluctantly exchanged a few polite words with him before directly saying, "Get me some hiking ropes, hooks, gloves, and assault jackets." "Where are you going to play again?" Boss Li asked. "Let's go out and play with a few friends." Chen Yi looked around the store, saying perfunctorily. When I saw the crossbows and triangular military thorns in the glass counter, my eyes lit up. "Boss, how do we sell these crossbows and military thorns?" The boss was taken aback, perhaps not expecting Chen Yi to be interested in these. He said, "This is my own collection, I never thought I would sell it." 5,000, you're really putting me in a difficult position. 6,000, if it's not enough, I won't buy it. Deal. As Chen Yi finished speaking, Boss Li quickly agreed. Chen Yi walked out of the store with a large package of things, thought for a moment, and left all the things he had bought at home. Coincidentally, the items he had bought from the supermarket were also delivered to his home. After moving them into the house, he went downstairs again and drove the car into a repair shop. A young man walked over and looked at the Wrangler, asking, "Does the boss repair the car?" "No, I hope you can help me modify the car. The price is reasonable, but I have some requirements." After the person finished listening to my request, they were somewhat surprised and said, "Boss, you're going to war. And the cost is not low." I said, "The cost is not a problem, but it must meet my requirements and I will have it in 2 days." I said seriously, 2 days? Are you joking? It will take at least 5 days to finish it. The young man was a bit speechless, but when I said I could increase the money, he didn't complain anymore. "Pay a deposit of 5,000 first, come and pick up the car at this time in 2 days, and then pay the final payment based on the actual cost. Do you think it's okay?" Yes. Just as Chen Yi was preparing to go out, he glanced at the young man and said, "Here's a piece of advice for you. Stock up as much food and water as possible in the next few days, and then stay at home well. It's good for you." Without looking at him, he left directly. Returning home again, I checked the countdown and found that there were still 67 hours and 45 minutes left. I made some food for myself, rested for a while, studied the system interface, but still didn't find anything. Open the bag and take out the crossbow and military spear. There are only 30 crossbows and arrows available, which is a problem. In addition, military spikes also need to be further processed and polished before they can be used. Although he has not yet experienced the apocalypse of zombies, Chen Yi estimates that his current weapons have very limited killing power and cannot provide him with sufficient security in the apocalypse. Therefore, the weapons must be upgraded, modified, and supplemented. Thinking of this, Chen Yi left home with a few crossbows and military thorns. It wasn't until the afternoon when the sun was setting that Chen Yi successfully negotiated with a hardware processing shop owner to help produce a batch of crossbows. He paid twice the price before the other party agreed. Despite strict control over these things in China, there weren't many people willing to take on this job. When I took out the military spike and asked the boss for help with processing and polishing, the boss's gaze changed and he even wanted to refund the processing fee he had already collected. We agreed in advance that when we come to pick up the things the day after tomorrow, we will pay in cash. I don't ask you what you're planning to do with these things, and it's like you haven't been here before. I smiled, paid the deposit, and left. Thinking that Gang Zijiu should have woken up, he made a phone call and there was no answer for a long time. He also dialed his other friend Jiang Ping over. Jiang Ping was Chen Ye's youngest son and had been together since childhood. He was always thoughtful and always helped Chen Yi with advice. When he was young, many of the bear kids around him suffered losses from them. "Where is it?" "Home, what's going on?" Chen Yi suddenly said solemnly when he heard the voice over there. "Next, I'll tell you what I'm telling you. Listen carefully. I'll go to the nearby supermarket and buy as much food, water, and some daily necessities as possible. After going back, reinforce the doors and windows of the house, stay well, and keep in touch with me. The other side remained silent for a while and asked, what's going to happen? Do you still need to stock up on supplies? I'm telling you now that you won't believe it, but I won't harm you by listening to me. In 3 days, you will naturally know what's going on. Remember not to let anyone in except me when you go back. Jiang Ping didn't ask any more questions. Okay, I'll listen to you. He had a faint feeling of wind and rain approaching. Jiang Ping didn't mention it for now, but Chen Yi returned home. When he arrived downstairs, he suddenly remembered that there was still a fire axe in the building, so he took it back home. While polishing the fire axe with tools, my mind was still reminiscing about what kind of zombies I had seen in previous movies and TV shows looked like. The more I thought about it, the more chaotic it became, so I decided not to think about it anymore. I was tired all day today, and after taking a shower, I simply ate something. I edited what I said to Jiang Ping during the day into a message and sent it to Gongzi. Then I lay down in bed and went to sleep. At this point, the countdown was 59 hours and 18 minutes. Chapter 2. My Golden Fingers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the next 2 days, Chen Yi will exercise at home to adjust his physical condition and enhance his physical strength. He doesn't have to prepare for any triathlon competition, he just feels that good physical strength is crucial for entering the apocalypse, whether it's fighting against zombies or escaping for survival. During this time, I finally got in touch with Gongzi. The chubby guy almost drank that night and it took him a whole day to recover. Fortunately, this chubby guy doesn't have much advantage, he just listens to Chen Ye's words and starts preparing without saying a word. Originally, according to Chen Ye's idea, it was best to call both brothers over to survive together, but unlike Chen Yi, who had just started college and his only relative, his grandfather, passed away and was alone. Jiang Ping lives with his parents, grandparents, while Gongzi lives with a group of friends who grew up in the same courtyard, unable to leave the others alone. Chen Yi also cannot accept so many people, at least not for now. 2 days passed quickly, and Chen Yi took away the modified car and weapons as promised. The final payment almost spent all of his current savings. Sitting alone by the windowsill at home, gazing at the gradually darkening sky in the distance, Chen Ye's heart began to become gloomy. Unlike the previous 2 days when he was busy preparing materials to exercise, after sitting down today, Chen Yi suddenly felt a little scared. He didn't know if he was ready or not, ready to welcome such a new world. After an unknown amount of time, Chen Yi also fell asleep. The countdown to the end of the day was 8 hours and 25 minutes. I woke up early in the morning, perhaps due to the unease in my heart, or perhaps even a hint of curiosity. Looking out the window, as usual, people follow their established way of life. Although it is very likely that this will be the last normal morning in this world, Chen Yi still has a lucky mentality, hoping that all of this is just a joke. However, reality shattered Chen Ye's last glimmer of luck. Just as the countdown on the screen of light turned 0, some pedestrians who were originally walking on the street suddenly began to twitch and fall to the ground, while others frothed in their eyes. Many people on the road saw this scene and came forward to check. They took out their phones and called for an ambulance. However, for a while, the people lying on the ground slowly stopped moving, which scared the people around them. They all gathered around, and something unexpected happened. The people on the ground sat up and suddenly rushed towards the nearest passerby, biting at the person. At this moment, the people around suddenly realized that the person's open mouth was actually 2 rows of wild animal-like sharp teeth, which were not human teeth. Just as everyone was stunned for a moment, several people who had been knocked down were already bitten with blood. A middle-aged man finally pushed away a crazy woman, and the sharp pain in his shoulder made him look at it. He was bitten off a large piece of flesh, and blood couldn't stop flowing out. Looking at the woman still swallowing the flesh and blood in her mouth, the terrifying scene scared even passers-by inside the middle-aged man, who turned around and ran away, their faces filled with fear. Soon, the streets were in chaos, with people being chased and running around everywhere. The pursuers had white pupils, blue skin, and blood all over their bodies, not knowing whether it was their own or those who had been bitten. Even with some psychological preparation, Qingyan was still frightened by the scene in front of him. His hands and feet unconsciously began to tremble slightly, and he dared not look outside the window anymore. He turned around and took a big sip of water. The waves in his heart gradually calmed down, and then he remembered to open the light curtain, which had also changed. On the left appeared a three-dimensional projection of a human figure, which was clearly Qingyan's own image. A column of information in the lower left corner of the projection caught Qingyan's attention. Name: Qingyan, race. Human race, height 185 centimeters, weight 80 kilograms, various attribute strength 11, agility 10, physical strength 12, mental strength 10, willpower 15, hint. Ordinary human attribute strength 10, agility 10, physical strength 10, mental strength 10, willpower 10. Seeing this, Qingyan was a bit pleased. Perhaps due to years of exercise experience, his strength, agility, and physical strength have improved to varying degrees compared to ordinary people. The most surprising thing for him is that willpower is actually a whole higher than ordinary people. 5 o'clock. The first three attributes need not be discussed, and mental strength is also easy to understand. However, Qingyan really doesn't know what benefits it has when his willpower is high. Can he tolerate pain more than ordinary people? Continuing to look to the right of the light screen, it shows that the enabled function. Basic information detection. If Qingyan did not understand correctly, this function should be able to detect the basic information of objects. Finally, there is the area in the lower right corner with the words task written on it. The consciousness is concentrated here, and a line of text is displayed. At the same time, Qingyan also heard a female voice. The initial task of the Doomsday killing system is to complete 10 first-order zombie kills, and reward 1 random attribute point. This is the first time Qingyan heard the system's voice. It seems that this is forcing me to go out and fight zombies, Qingyan smiled bitterly. Just then, his mobile phone rang, and just as he answered, Dongzi's excited voice sounded across the street. Brother Yi, people here are crazy about biting people everywhere and lying in the trough. Is this a biochemical crisis? I didn't know what was going on, so I called him, but no one answered the phone after several calls, which made Chen's ambition cool and gave him a bad feeling. Now he has no way to go and help him, and he has already told him everything he can remind him. All he can do now is hope that his lucky person has his own destiny. With his ears pressed against the door, Qingyan wanted to hear what was happening outside. There were faint sounds of knocking on the door and the roar of some animals, so he was not ready to go out for the time being. Qingyan took out his crossbow and some arrows, and started practicing shooting at home to test the power of his long-range weapon. Pour down the solid wooden table at home, aim it at firing, and in an instant, the crossbow arrow pierced through the entire tabletop and nailed it to the wall, and the entire arrow disappeared into the wall. Seeing this power, Qingyan was very satisfied. The next step is to practice accurately. In addition to practicing fixed-point shooting, Qingyan also made a few simple moving targets. After several days of diligent practice, Qingyan can now achieve 100 hits in fixed-point shooting within 50 meters, while shooting moving objects can only guarantee a hit rate within 15 meters. In recent days, Qingyan has also been practicing how to use a fire axe to kill zombies and how to make chopping more lethal. When Qingyan was resting, he would carefully observe the movements of the zombies on the street. Now there is no trace of humans on the street, and slowly moving zombies are everywhere. Qingyan found that these zombies seem to be particularly sensitive to sound, and their relative vision is not as good. As for their sense of smell, it is currently difficult to judge. However, Given the influence of various zombie movies and TV shows, their sense of smell is not too bad, at least they should be more sensitive to the smell of blood. After considering for a few days, Qingyan finally decided to leave his home and kill the zombies. Talking on paper all the time is meaningless. After listening, there was no sound outside the door. I slowly opened the door and observed the situation in the corridor, only to find that there was a figure standing still at the other end of the corridor. With light hands and feet, Qingyan walked out of the door and carefully looked at the figure behind him. He silently recited, "Turn on basic information detection," and the system sound echoed in his mind. First order ordinary zombie, strength 11, agility 10, stamina 20, mental strength 2, and unintentional willpower attributes. Seeing this, Qingyan had a rough idea in his heart. After thinking for a moment, he knocked on the door with his hand and made a little noise. The figure immediately turned around and rushed over to see Qingyan, with a low growl in his mouth. Without hesitation, Qingyan raised his crossbow and aimed at the target's head. With a swift sound, the arrow accurately penetrated the target. The person's head also brought out some red and white objects scattered throughout the hallway. When Qingyan approached, he discovered that it was a female zombie. Although it was a bit disgusting, Qingyan still wanted to get closer and check. After all, this was the first zombie he had killed. At this moment, a male zombie walked out of a room behind Qingyan and rushed straight towards him. By the time Qingyan reacted, the zombie had already rushed in front of him. He only had time to lift the fire axe hanging from his waist to horizontally block the hand and a sharp tooth that the zombie was grabbing. Qingyan was pressed down on the ground and couldn't get up for a moment. Looking at the terrifying face close at him, Qingyan noticed that the opening of the zombie's mouth was extremely exaggerated and had a visual impact. Finally, Qingyan kicked the zombie away with one kick, took a deep breath, and hit its neck with an axe. He saw that half of the zombie's neck had been cut off, and he had to make another axe before the zombie stopped moving. Qingyan didn't have time to think of anything else, so he picked up the crossbow that had fallen to the ground and closed the door tightly. He leaned against the door, panting heavily, and recalling his previous experience, it was truly thrilling. Chapter 3. Awakening from Killing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After checking the progress of the task, it showed that it was 2 out of 10, and it was indeed necessary to kill 8 zombies to complete the initial task. Looking back at the detection results of the system just now, Qingyan finally had a preliminary understanding of the zombies on the street. Their strength was slightly greater than that of ordinary people, mainly because their physical strength was twice that of ordinary humans. This made him alert, and he must not engage in long-term battles with them, and must make quick decisions. At the same time, as Qingyan had previously thought, attacking the head is a good choice, but more practical training is needed to ensure a one-hit kill in order to be foolproof. Currently, crossbows are still Qingyan's best weapon, and close combat is still a bit dangerous for him. For now, they can only be used to repair zombies. After taking a good rest at home for a while, Qingyan realized that he didn't feel any fear or similar feelings after killing the zombies. Instead, he felt a little excited, but more eager for more practical experience. Having prepared a good table of dishes to reward himself, Qingyan also counted the food and water at home while eating, planning to use it for about 2 months. Considering the possibility of unexpected situations, Qingyan decided to accelerate his progress in hunting zombies, adapt to the battle with zombies as soon as possible, and then search for supplies in this building. At night, lying in bed, Qingyan reminisced about the battles of the day, thrilling but also thrilling. Unlike the extreme sports he had participated in the past, there was no opportunity for mistakes or regret in zombie battles. Once he started, he had to succeed, otherwise he would pay the price of his life. Grasping his fists tightly, Qingyan added fuel to himself in his heart. Like every time he encountered difficulties in the past, he encouraged himself in his heart. I want to live, not only to live on my own, but also to protect my friends whom I care about and live together, even if we keep killing. The next morning, perhaps because he had completed his psychological construction last night, he slept exceptionally well, and the faint roar of zombies outside the window could no longer affect Qingyan. After having some breakfast, I brought a black canvas bag and carried the fire axe in an easily removable position behind me. I hung crossbows and triangular military spikes around my waist, and my assault suit contained some high-calorie foods such as chocolate and medical alcohol made of gauze. Holding a crossbow that had already been fitted with crossbows and arrows, unlike his first battle outside, Qingyan was fully armed this time, even wearing several layers of masks on his face to prevent blood splashing into his mouth and nose when killing zombies. Opening the door and touching his neighbor's house to his left, Qingyan remembered that she lived in a young white-collar woman who lived alone. She often greeted her when she went to work and finished work, so she was also quite familiar with her. That's why Qingyan chose her as the first target. After listening to the commotion, the door was surprisingly quiet, which made Qingyan doubt whether his master was at home. Due to knowing that the hostess had a habit of keeping a spare key under the carpet at the entrance, Qingyan smoothly obtained the key and quietly opened the door, trying not to make any noise. The living room was empty, and the doors to the bathroom and bedroom were closed. Arriving at the entrance of the restroom, I noticed through the crack in the pattern on the door that there was no one inside except for some blood stains. Qingyan looked at the bedroom door, and the bloodstains indicated that the owner of the room was likely infected, and the grip of the crossbow handle was tighter. Qingyan slowly turned the door handle open, pushed the door hard, and immediately stood back to maintain a distance from the bedroom door. Suddenly, an unbearable odor drifted out, followed by a pale face in pajamas. She saw a large wound on her right leg, which was severely decaying, and some of her leg bones were also exposed. At this moment, she was limping towards Qingyan. Although the speed was slow, one could feel the desire for fresh flesh and blood in front of her from her fierce expression. Without hesitation, Qingyan shot an arrow into the right eye socket of the zombie in front of her, and the female zombie fell to the ground in response. After checking the house again and confirming that there were no other zombies, he began to search for materials in the house. Before leaving, Qingyan had a brainwave and took away the bottles of perfume on the makeup table. Next, Qingyan searched several other houses on the entire 6th floor. Except for 3 doors that could not be opened, the doors of the other houses were not locked. During this time, he accidentally killed 4 zombies and even a 7-year-old child zombie, which made him deeply saddened. Returning home, looking at the packed canvas bags, Qingyan not only increased the number of zombie kills to 7, but also gained a lot of experience in fighting against zombies and nearly a week's worth of material reserves. It has been almost half a month since the outbreak of the zombie crisis. Looking at the scene outside the building, there is no sign of rescue teams coming, and then looking at the water and electricity supply at home that has remained unchanged compared to peacetime, Qingyan's face began to look ugly. Although the water and electricity supply at home is still very sufficient, this precisely reflects a serious problem. If this disaster were to occur on a global scale, the relevant departments would definitely have planned to restrict the use of water and electricity by civilians. However, the current situation indicates that there may be no one managing or capable of managing how residents use water and electricity. It seems that the rescue team can't be relied on for the time being, we still have to rely on ourselves. Qingyan thought silently. Fortunately, Qingyan is gradually adapting to this kind of life now, and his initial task is also about to be completed. After resting for a day and arriving at the 7th floor, Qingyan began his second search operation. Unfortunately, there were only 2 doors on this floor that could be opened to enter. Finally, after cleaning up the second room, Qingyan completed the initial task. Congratulations to the host for completing the initial task, killing 10 first-level ordinary zombies. Randomly reward 1 attribute, do you want to use it? Use. Without any hesitation, Qingyan chose to use it. Suddenly, he found a force surging out of his body, feeling it all over his body. Qingyan had a feeling that he could knock an ordinary zombie away with just 1 punch. Watching his power attribute in the bottom left corner turn to 12 points, Qingyan really didn't expect that just 1 point of power attribute would bring such a significant improvement. Thinking of this, his eyes gradually became fiery. It seems that obtaining attribute points will be the most effective way for me to improve my combat power. At this moment, the system light screen once again released a task. Complete 31st level ordinary zombie kills, reward 2 random attribute points, and if completed within 48 hours, the reward will double. He didn't immediately choose to accept the task. Qingyan sorted out the spoils of the day, rested well for 2 days, and also let his body adapt to the changes brought by the increased strength. Next, Qingyan combined his 2 experiences of killing zombies and added a steel pipe to his army spike. After fixing it, he successfully turned it into a long-handled weapon, providing a relatively safe distance and greater security when fighting against zombies. Everything was ready, and on this day Qingyan chose to take on the task. Immediately, a 48-hour countdown began to beat. Qingyan decided not to worry about whether the door of the resident could be opened, but to lock it and forcefully break it open. With his current strength, it was just a matter of his feet. Although the speed of killing zombies has increased significantly, the risk has also increased significantly. Several times, due to the loud noise of breaking through the door, it attracted the attention of other zombies around and even upstairs, resulting in a situation of 1 to 2 or even 1 to 3. Fortunately, Qingyan's calm mind and the cover between the houses have always saved him from danger, which has also greatly improved his skills. In just a few days, all the floors above the 6th floor were cleaned up by Qingyan. When he arrived at the rooftop, Qingyan took out the search telescope and observed the surrounding buildings to see if any other survivors could be found. Unfortunately, there was no discovery, but instead many zombies were seen trapped in the room. Returning home, Qingyan checked the progress of the task, which was 21/30. He was quite satisfied with the progress and believed that he could complete the task before completing the cleaning of the zombies on several floors downstairs. Chapter 4. Survivors. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The cleaning work downstairs has become increasingly difficult because as the distance from the first floor gets closer, the movement of breaking doors or fighting zombies will attract more and more zombies until the 3rd floor. Qingyan no longer dared to use violent means to break through the door, because if he made a louder sound at this time, even the zombies on the street might be attracted, which would be really troublesome. This difficult problem immediately stumped Qingyan, and what was even more frustrating was that the task progress was stuck at 28/30, which was very awkward. Lying in bed at home, Qingyan considered clearing the zombies at the entrance of the 1st floor first. However, once the zombies from the 1st to 3rd floors rushed down, he would be sandwiched in front and back, leaving no way to escape. Seeing that the 48-hour limit only leaves less than 34 hours, and by tomorrow morning it may be less than 24 hours, Qingyan felt a little sore at the thought that not completing the task within the specified time would result in losing 2 attribute rewards. The next morning, Qingyan tried to search for the zombie in the already opened house, but unfortunately, he did not find any trace of the zombie. Holding a pry bar, Qingyan stood in front of a locked door of a house, attempting to gently pry it open. Just then, an unexpected thing happened. The door of a locked house next to him suddenly opened a crack. As Qingyan had not yet started moving, a sudden sound of the door lock opening could be heard in the otherwise quiet corridor. Fortunately, this startled Qingyan, and his crossbow was directly aimed at the place where the sound appeared. His eyes were fixed on the crack in the door, and if there was any movement, Qingyan would shoot an arrow without hesitation. It was also because of this action that a panicked voice immediately came from the crack in the door, "Don't kill me, I'm not a zombie. Slowly come out." Although there was no emotion in his tone, Qingyan breathed a sigh of relief in his heart and finally met a survivor. These days he has been alone, although he has been busy, his heart is already a bit gloomy. Now that he finally sees another similar person in front of him, Qingyan feels somewhat comforted. "I saw a young woman in her 30s wearing a black dress and a pair of sports shoes on her feet. She couldn't see her appearance clearly, but her body was thin and a bit shaky. It seemed that she had been hungry for some time. "Are you alone?" Qingyan asked. "Yes, may I ask if you have anything to eat?" "I haven't eaten for 2 days." The woman's voice was a bit weak and didn't think much. Qingyan handed her a bread and a pack of cookies and said, "Go ahead, it's not safe outside." The woman's mouth was already stuffed with bread and she couldn't speak, so she took Qingyan directly into the room. After closing the door, Qingyan quietly watched as the woman wolfed down all the bread and cookies, then took a bottle of water from her bag and gave it to her. After a while, the woman finally swallowed the food in her mouth and said softly, "My name is Qingyan. I am a nurse, and we don't have much food at home, but we have already eaten all the food we can eat until the night before yesterday. We rely on some water to support ourselves until now." After saying these words, Qingyan still couldn't breathe. It seems that her strength has not recovered yet. "My name is Qingyan, and my introduction was very simple." Then he said, "Let's rest for a while, and then bring your clothes and come with me to my house on the 6th floor. It's safer there." Qingyan secretly glanced at Qingyan and agreed. Upon arriving at Qingyan's house, Qingyan was stunned. She saw that the bedroom and living room were filled with supplies, including food, water, and various daily necessities. It was hard to imagine where Qingyan had gone to collect these supplies in such a short period of time. Seemingly aware of Qingyan's doubts, Qingyan said, "I have a habit of hoarding supplies myself. These days, I have collected all the supplies from the 4th to 12th floors." Now Qingyan was truly stunned. There must be many zombies wandering in this building, and collecting so many floors of supplies must have already been a battle with zombies. At this moment, she noticed that there were dark red bloodstains on both the blade of the axe behind Qingyan and the tip of the long-handled weapon, and her heart felt a bit chilly. In the evening, Qingyan had a good meal, took a brief shower, and the two of them sat down. Qingyan said, "In the future, you can help with some logistics work at home, including sorting out the medicine I found. I can't raise an idle person at home." Qingyan quickly said, "Okay, no problem, I will do my best to do my own thing." Although the words may sound unpleasant, Qingyan must explain some things clearly in advance. "Let's go rest first. There's still something to do tomorrow." Qingyan agreed and turned around to walk towards the room, looking at the slender figure. At this moment, Qingyan realized that the young woman he saved seemed to have a hot figure. After this delay, there was even less time left, especially since it was already evening and the light was too dim to shoot zombies on the street. Standing on the balcony, Qingyan felt a bit helpless. At this moment, Qingyan noticed that there were 2 zombie figures swaying on a balcony on the 5th floor opposite him. It seemed like a couple, but when he picked up his binoculars and looked, he didn't know when these 2 zombies, who were originally walking around the house, had walked onto the balcony. Qingyan was overjoyed because from his perspective, he was completely confident in shooting them. "I took the crossbow from the living room, calmed my mood, and aimed it at the male head who was bereaved. I shot my head with an arrow. But just as the male zombie was knocked down by a headshot, the female zombie next to him seemed startled and began to search for something. Qingyan quickly hid behind the window, secretly observing her every move. After a while, the female zombie returned to its original state, and Qingyan aimed again, this time piercing her left eye socket directly. At the moment when the female zombie fell to the ground, a delightful system voice came. "Congratulations to the host for completing 30 level 1 ordinary zombie killing missions within a limited time, with a reward of 4 random attribute points. Do you want to use it now?" Qingyan chose to use it. He had just breathed a sigh of relief in his heart and finally completed the mission perfectly. However, the sudden excruciating pain on his body made him kneel on the ground, and his muscles seemed to start cramping at the same time. However, Qingyan held back no sound, his face turned red, and his forehead veins erupted. After about 10 seconds, the excruciating pain gradually disappeared, and Qingyan also collapsed on the ground. It took a long time to get up. Opening the light curtain, Qingyan found that his attributes had changed. Strength 14, Agility 11, Stamina 13, Mental Strength 10, Willpower 15. Is it because too many attributes were added at once, and the physical changes have led to the current situation? Qin Ambition thought, although it was only a short 10 seconds, the sudden and intense pain was really not something that ordinary people can bear. However, the changes in his body after the severe pain also made Qingyan ecstatic. At this point, his sense of exhaustion had disappeared, and he had moved around for a while. He found that his body not only increased in strength, but also became more agile. His body, which was already covered in flesh and tendons, had become even stronger, with a faint burst of explosive power. At this time, Qingyan had strong confidence and could win the battle against 7 or 8 zombies. I went back to take a hot bath and was ready to rest well. Just then, there was some noise coming from Song Qingyan's room. Turning around, Qingyan saw Song Qingyan walking out of the room and whispering to Qingyan, "I can't sleep. Can I talk to you for a while?" Qingyan replied with a good mood, "Okay, come and sit down. I'll pour you some water." She drank water in silence for a while, and after a while, Song Qingyan spoke up, "There was originally a colleague who lived here with me, but on the way home from work today, a zombie exploded and she was bitten to death by a zombie in front of me. I was watching her. When I fell to the ground and reached out to beg for my help, I was extremely scared. I didn't dare to reach out and pull her, so I ran back." She cried softly as she spoke. Chapter 5. Song Qingyan. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Upon hearing this, Qingyan looked at the woman crying and didn't know how to persuade or what was going on in his mind. He immediately hugged the woman into his arms, and she suddenly felt embraced. Her face blushed but she didn't struggle. The experiences of these days have made her almost on the brink of collapse. Feeling the warmth and strong masculine aura of a man, the woman no longer cried and snuggled up in Qingyan's arms. Not long after, she fell asleep directly. It seems that she hasn't rested well in the past few days. After lifting the woman to bed, she saw her in pajamas, her chest full, and her 2 snow-white thighs made Qingyan daydream endlessly. He was also a normal man, and the sight in front of him had already made him react. He dared not look at Qingyan anymore and immediately turned around and walked out of the room. The next morning, as soon as Qingyan woke up, he heard the sound of water coming from the kitchen. When he got up, he saw that Song Qingyan was preparing breakfast. Looking at the sexy figure still wearing pajamas, Qingyan was stunned. Song Qingyan felt someone was looking at her, and when she turned around, she saw Qingyan staring at her legs in a daze. Her face immediately turned red. Although she was not an unconscious little girl, she still felt a bit embarrassed when she remembered last night's scene. She quickly said, "Brother Yi, go wash yourself up. Breakfast will be ready soon." "Oh, okay." Qingyan also regained consciousness and walked into the restroom. When he came out, there is already a bowl of hot noodles and 3 perfectly fried poached eggs on the table. Although it is simple, it looks very appetizing. Qingyan is not polite, and he starts to eat. Song Qingyan is drinking millet porridge while watching Qingyan solve the food on the table. Perhaps due to his improved physique, Qingyan clearly felt that his appetite had increased significantly. He said to Song Qingyan, "Next time, make a double serving, it's not enough for me to eat." Song Qingyan nodded and happily went to pack the dishes. After thinking for a moment, Qingyan said to his figure in the kitchen, "Today we will take out most of the meat at home and make it into jerky. Then we will put some large containers on the rooftop to collect rainwater. I don't know when the water and electricity will be cut off, so we can use it later." Okay, I'll listen to Brother Yi." Song Qingyan agreed, and while the two of them were busy these days, the work at home was proceeding in an orderly manner. At the same time, their relationship has become increasingly familiar, and the somewhat ambiguous atmosphere has also become more intimate. On this day, wearing equipment and weapons, Qingyan prepared to go out with a pry bar to complete his plan to break through the door. Over the past few days, he has practiced with the upstairs door many times and finally mastered the trick of not making too much noise while prying open the door. At this moment, Song Qingyan, who hesitated behind for a long time, walked forward and hugged Qingyan's waist, gave him a kiss, blushed, and said, "Be careful. If it's too dangerous, don't worry, come back immediately. I'll be waiting for you at the door." Looking at the beautiful woman in front of him, Qingyan smiled and patted Song Qingyan's shoulder, saying, "Don't worry, there's no problem." Qingyan had some concerns before, but after his physical condition improves again, he has a great confidence in completing the cleaning of the entire building's zombies. The cleaning went very smoothly this time. It wasn't even dark yet, and the entire building's zombies were thoroughly cleaned up by Qingyan, and all the supplies were found at home. After returning home, Song Qingyan quickly helped him change into clothes stained with zombie blood and said, "Hurry up and take a shower, I'll make you something to eat." Looking at the busy figure of the woman, she suddenly realized that it's nice to have a woman at home in this post-apocalyptic world. During dinner, Qingyan and Song Qingyan discussed teaching her how to fight zombies. Qingyan couldn't always be by her side to protect her, and Song Qingyan had to learn how to fight zombies and even humans. With the advent of the apocalypse, Qingyan really cannot guarantee that he will lose the constraints brought by the laws and morals of peacetime, or what people or people's hearts will become. He sighed lightly in his heart. Perhaps the most terrifying thing in this apocalypse is not necessarily zombies. The two of them plan to start training Song Qingyan from the next day, mainly to strengthen her physical fitness and learn how to attack zombies and protect herself. Song Qingyan trained very hard. Obviously she also wants to have the ability to protect herself, at least not to drag Qingyan down. Half a month later, Song Qingyan made significant changes. Her body became stronger, and her body became full of vitality. Looking at Song Qingyan now, he said, "You don't have any problems with the basic training anymore, as long as you persist well. Now you need to go out with me and truly face the zombies. Today's goal is for you to independently kill a zombie." This scared Song Qingyan. "I don't think you're ready yet. When I see the zombie's appearance, I'll be scared and my legs will go weak," Song Qingyan said anxiously. "It's okay, I'll help you when it's crucial not to get hurt, but you must learn to face a zombie on your own." At this moment, Qingyan appeared somewhat ruthless, but had no choice. This was a step she had to take. As long as she succeeded, she wouldn't be too timid to take a knife when facing zombies again in the future. After a moment of silence, Song Qingyan nodded heavily. Coming to the first floor with Qingyan, Song Qingyan saw 4 or 5 zombies outside the building. Her face turned pale and her legs trembled. If it weren't for a security door, she might have wanted to escape back upstairs. Qingyan grabbed Song Qingyan's shoulder and lightly patted her. "Don't worry, there's me. I'll clean up most of the zombies later and leave one for you to deal with. I'll watch over from the side." Song Qingyan looked at Qingyan who was holding her and agreed, "Okay." Then, Song Qingyan saw the zombies outside the door falling one after another under Qingyan's crossbow. When there was only one head left, Qingyan said to Song Qingyan behind, "Get ready, I'm going to open the door. Remember to attack the head, think about how I taught you." At this moment, Song Qingyan was so nervous that he even forgot to agree, just holding on to the long spear that Qingyan gave him tightly with both hands, and his eyes fixed on the door. As soon as the door opened, the zombie not far away rushed towards them. Qingyan retreated and gave way to Song Qingyan. He looked at the rushing zombie again, frowned, and then added another arrow to one of its legs. The zombie's speed suddenly slowed down. Ignoring the zombie, Qingyan looked silently at Song Qingyan, who was still motionless. Qingyan felt a little helpless and said, "Do you still seem too impatient?" But at this moment, Song Qingyan took a step forward, the tip of the general's spear aimed at the zombie, and slowly adjusted. The zombie rushed forward at this moment, and Song Qingyan forced herself to look at the zombie. She handed her arm forward and saw the military spike directly inserted into the zombie's mouth. The tip penetrates from the back of the brain. The zombie that was quickly stuck on the military thorn stopped moving, but at this moment, Song Qingyan's body also remained motionless. It wasn't that she didn't want to move, but that she was too nervous and stiff to obey. At this moment, Qingyi leaned over and kicked the zombie stuck on the military spike away, then slowly carried Song Qingyan back to the building and closed the anti-theft door. Chapter 6. Partners and New Tasks. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Looking at the woman who was still somewhat stunned, it really impressed Qingyi. He had already planned to fail today, but he didn't expect this woman to overcome her fear and kill the zombie even though she was afraid to death. Although he helped, it was still admirable. From this point on, Qingyi began to recognize this person from the bottom of his heart, and she was qualified to become his survival partner. It wasn't until she returned to her home on the 6th floor that Song Qingyan slowly recovered. You're great, you've overcome your fear. The next time you face a zombie again, you'll be much more composed. Qingyi said to Song Qingyan, take a good rest. I'll cook tonight. During dinner at night, Song Qingyan said a lot to Qingyi for the first time, as if wanting to vent the emotions that had been suppressed in his heart during this period. Qingyi also took out a lot of wine, and the two drank happily, telling each other about their past and expressing their longing for family and friends. Soon, both of them got a bit drunk. Looking at Qingyi, Song Qingyan's gaze had a different meaning. Thank you, Brother Yi. Qingyi smiled and didn't say anything. The two of them fell silent, looking at each other. Suddenly, Qingyi pounced and pressed directly on Song Qingyan's body, using his mouth to imprint the woman's lips. The woman struggled a little and gave up resistance. After a while, she even took the initiative to respond to the other. Qingyi's hands moved up and down on the woman's body, and their breathing became faster and faster. Finally, Qingyi picked up the woman's peach with both hands and pressed her onto the windowsill. Just as they parted ways, the two kissed fiercely again, and the man was kissed by the woman's hands. His legs were tightly clamped from behind, while his hands gently caressed the snow-white thighs and vigorously rubbed the white rabbit on his chest, making the woman on the ground pant and gasp. He heard the woman almost seductively say, "Take me into the bedroom." Qingyi did not answer, but instead carried him towards the bedroom door, with the woman's hands wrapped around his neck and her head buried in his chest. Feeling the almost burning hot temperature the next morning, Qingyi woke up feeling refreshed and relieved, feeling the knots in his heart cleared away these days. Looking at the naked and delicate body next to her, the continuous campaigns last night exhausted her, but also made her feel the peak of happiness countless times. It seems that the changes in his physique have also greatly strengthened his aspect. In the future, it should be noted that as an ordinary person, Song Qingyan cannot bear too many times. After some physical activity, I completely adapted to the changes in my body caused by the increase in attribute points. There is also a speculation in Qin ambition that every time my attribute points increase, my body needs to adapt for a period of time. The more points I improve, the longer it takes to adapt. Once the attributes have just been improved, Qingyi casually uses his body's strength. He has a premonition that even if he doesn't see any impact at the moment, it will definitely cause some subtle and irreversible damage to his body. In the next few days, Qingyi plans to have Song Qingyan kill more zombies to quickly adapt to his rhythm. Since he has already recognized this partner, let alone his own woman, Qingyi not only wants her to survive, but also to provide her with a safe, stable, and superior living environment. Qingyi does not want his woman to live in the end of the world. Feeling the beauty around her moving for a moment, Qingyi walked over and held her in his arms. He gently said, "You should rest at home today, and I'll go out and investigate the situation around you." Song Qingyan, who was still preparing to pretend to sleep, couldn't fit in anymore. She anxiously hugged Qingyi's back and said, "There are so many zombies outside, it's too dangerous." "It's okay, I mainly focus on exploring this time and try not to disturb the group of zombies." You stay at home, lock the door, and don't let anyone in except me. Seeing that she couldn't convince Qingyan, Song Qingyan nodded and started to help him tidy up his equipment. This is Qingyan's true first time leaving the building and beginning to interact with the outside world, so he has prepared sufficient supplies, essential weapons and equipment, as well as sufficient food supplies and medicine. Just as Qingyan stepped out of the anti-theft door, a long-awaited system sound sounded. Detected that the host has left the safe haven for the first time, issued a task. Detect the surrounding environment and survivors, kill 100 level 1 zombies, rescue 10 survivors, reward 9 random attribute points, 3 can be specified attribute points, no time limit. A total of 12 attribute points, and even 3 can be specified to add to the desired attributes. Qingyan's eyes flashed with a hint of excitement. This task must be completed, zombies, but it's okay to say that rescuing survivors means entering other buildings for search, which is a very dangerous behavior. After entering the building, the escape routes become very limited, and various unexpected situations may occur. Faced with such a challenge, Qingyan did not consider giving up. He relied on his strong physique and believed that he had the ability to completely protect himself. Along the way, Qingyan avoided the group of corpses and tried to fight with military spikes and axes as much as possible. On the one hand, the number of crossbows and arrows was limited, and on the other hand, Qingyan also needed to exercise his ability to engage in close combat with zombies. Across the street from a small supermarket, Qingyan was observing the situation at the entrance of the supermarket. He scanned the system and found a total of 10 ordinary zombies with similar attributes. He felt that his current strength was just enough to challenge him. With his left hand holding the military thorn and his right hand taking off the fire axe behind him, Qingyan walked towards the supermarket entrance. He had just approached, perhaps smelling the scent of a living person, and the 3 zombies outside rushed straight towards Qingyan. Without any panic, his left hand advanced and accurately pierced through the head of a zombie. He immediately pulled out his spear and used the other end to swing horizontally to knock down the second zombie to the ground. Without looking at the fallen zombie again, he lifted his right firefighting axe and chopped off the head of the last zombie in one go. The commotion of the fight attracted the remaining zombies, but Qingyan did not immediately move forward to face the battle. Instead, he retreated while fighting. The zombies who had not yet approached were stabbed to death with military spikes, while the zombies who had not been able to deal with them in time kicked them away. The fire axe in his right hand was always ready to guard against unexpected situations. In no time, all the zombies were taken care of by Qingyan. After resting in place for a while, Qingyan slowly walked towards the supermarket, ready to collect his loot. At this moment, Qingyan felt a few glances and did not immediately search everywhere. Instead, he squatted down and pretended to start checking his equipment, while his eyes began to quickly search for the location of the gaze. Sure enough, he found 2 pairs of eyes behind the curtains looking at this side. He noted the location of the window and no longer stopped entering the supermarket. Chapter 7. Rescue Tasks. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After entering, I checked both inside and outside the supermarket and found no other danger outside the zombies of 3 suspected supermarket staff members. Qingyan simply took some high-energy food and water, closed the door, and left the supermarket. This time, he came out mainly for exploration. When he went back, he just packed a bag of food that Song Qingyan liked and brought it back. Other supplies can be slowly moved back in the future. Continuing to clean up the zombies and check for any other material points in the surrounding area, I slowly walked around to the back of the building just now and quietly touched it. Instead of directly checking the room where I was looking, I went to the adjacent room with the door not closed. I leaned against the wall of the balcony and observed the adjacent balcony. The distance between the 2 balconies was very close. Taking advantage of the absence of anyone on top, Qingyan's figure jumped over and hid in the corner of the balcony again, secretly listening to the movements in the room. Sure enough, a man's voice came. That man has been away for a long time, let's go to the supermarket to move materials. The zombies inside. The corpse must have been killed by him too. Another man replied, wait a little longer. I'm worried that he has any companions. It's probably not easy to deal with such a fierce companion. Wait another half hour. If no one comes, we'll go down and move immediately. Chen Yi, who was listening outside, was overjoyed. He was just afraid of the zombies. Even though he knew the zombies had been cleaned up, he didn't dare to go down. The two old men didn't have the courage anymore. He was still thinking about a question at the moment, how to successfully rescue survivors, because it directly related to whether he could complete the task and obtain attribute points, so he had to figure out that the two people in front of him could just allow him to conduct an experiment. Thinking of this, Chen Yi didn't hide his figure anymore. He walked out and appeared directly next to the two men, which almost scared them to pee. The two of them quickly stood up, picked up the steel pipe next to them, and looked at Chen Yi with caution. They asked, when did you come in? What do you want to do? Seeing their reaction, Chen Yi almost didn't laugh and said nonchalantly, don't you want to go down to the supermarket to move supplies? Don't worry, I have already cleaned up the zombies downstairs and around the supermarket, which is very safe. You want us to move? Don't you take them yourself? The two looked at Chen Yi with a strange expression, I'll go down to the supermarket. A person can't take so many things, you can just go and get them, Chen Yi replied. Upon hearing Chen Yi's words, the two of them glanced at each other and rushed downstairs. Chen Yi followed slowly behind until they had brought several packages of supplies back and had already started frantically fighting for food in the room. Chen Yi's eyebrows still furrowed slightly, as the number of rescuers displayed by the system was still 0/10, indicating that the task had not been met. After thinking for a moment, Chen Yi picked up his weapon and walked out of the building, dealing with all the zombies. He was overjoyed to find that the number of rescuers had increased to February 10th. It seems that completing the rescue mission requires freeing the rescued survivors while ensuring that there is no zombie danger within a certain range. Chen Yi thought to himself and looked at the two people still wolfing down. Chen Yi ignored them and went downstairs. The supermarket supplies may be slowly moved by these two people, which is a pity, but compared to being able to understand the rules of the mission, this loss is not a big deal. Along the way, the number of zombie kills has also reached 26 out of 100, and the progress is good. Chen Yi doesn't expect to complete the killing task in a day or two. I saw a small hotel and thought there might be survivors inside, so I walked in. As soon as I entered the lobby, 3 zombies surrounded me. They were probably guests coming to check in, so I quickly dealt with them with a few axes. Just now, I saw that this hotel has 4 floors and there should be many rooms. After taking a break in the lobby, I found a set of keys with room numbers in the drawer at the front desk and walked towards the room on the first floor. As each room was opened, Chen Yi's face became increasingly strange. The things in these rooms clearly showed signs of being searched, and even the blankets and pillows had been taken away. If it were only 1 or 2 rooms, it would be fine. However, when Chen Yi inspected the entire first floor, he found that it had been completely searched, followed by the second and third floors. By the time Chen Yi walked to the 4th floor, his face was already very ugly. No matter who worked hard for a long time and didn't get anything, there would be no good expression on his face. Seeing the clearly upscale decoration on the 4th floor, Chen Yi knew that this floor was filled with luxurious suites and other rooms. As he was about to approach the door of the first room, he suddenly heard the sound of words, which gave him some comfort. Even if he couldn't find any useful materials, if he could complete some of the task progress, then he wouldn't have wasted this trip. Perhaps the quality of the door was too good, and Chen Yi couldn't hear what the people inside were saying clearly, but there should be more than 1 or 2 people listening, which made him even happier. However, at this moment, the sound inside the room suddenly became louder, accompanied by the screams and pleadings of women. Chen Yi opened the door and was somewhat surprised by the sight before him. He saw a group of people squatting in a corner of the wall, with 4 big men dressed in different costumes standing beside them, smiling as 2 men were gathered around a naked woman. When Qingyan came in, the few men who were still standing slowly walked over with cold eyes. The man who was still practicing animal husbandry looked at Qingyan disdainfully and said with a grin, "There are still quite a few equipment on his body. You guys grab him, break your hands and feet, leave something behind, and throw him downstairs." The people in the corner looked at Qingyan with sympathetic eyes. Upon hearing the man's words, Qingyan's heart froze and his killing intent surged. He raised his axe and cut off the hand of a man who had just approached, spraying blood all over the wall. The other few were startled by the sight, and then rushed forward to try to control Qingyan together. They also saw that the person who came today was also a ruthless person. Just as they were stunned, Qingyan had already taken off the crossbow hanging from his waist and shot an arrow through a person's neck. Blood gushed like a fountain, and another thrust of his leg turned another person into a shrimp. In an instant, there was only one enemy standing in front of Qingyan. This person was also fierce enough to not control the 3 who had fallen. He took the opportunity to bully Qingyan and punched him in front of his temple, trying to bring him down. However, Qingyan easily stepped back, and the man's fist passed in front of him. At this moment, the man also I was horrified to see a fist with bulging veins hitting his face, unable to dodge. The man's face was completely sunken, and he couldn't even see his facial features clearly. By the time the 2 perpetrators reacted, all 4 of his companions were lying on the ground, either dead or unconscious. The terrifying man looked at them with a ferocious smile and said, "You just said you wanted to break my hands and feet and throw them down, right?" This was the first time Qingyan had spoken since he entered, and the other man was about to say 2 harsh words. Qingyan swung an axe and the body separated. Looking at the last man again, he had just put on his pants when Qingyan kicked him to the ground. Before he could get up, there was intense pain in his feet. It turned out that Qingyan had pierced both of the man's ankles with a military stab, and the sudden pain almost made the man dizzy. But it wasn't over yet. The man's hands were stepped on, and his wrists were also pierced. Now, the man's limbs were all disabled, just as he himself said, but the object was himself. Before he could call out twice, his mouth was blocked by a pile of torn clothes. Qingyan lifted the man's neck with one hand and headed towards the balcony, throwing him down like garbage. Soon, the strong smell of blood attracted a large number of zombies, and in a few minutes, the man was devoured, leaving only a pile of bones and meat. Returning to the room, he dealt with the few people who had fallen one by one without any hesitation. With fierce methods, he scared the remaining people in the room and dared not move. Qingyan said expressionlessly, "You guys, clean up the bodies here." The people pointed at trembled, but dared not say anything and immediately started taking action. Qingyan found a piece of clothing and wrapped the woman up, gently placing it on the sofa. Looking at the lifeless woman, Qingyan sighed and didn't say anything. He sat alone and thought about his behavior just now. This was also his first time killing someone, and there was no special feeling. The sight he saw just entering the door made him lose his sanity, which made him feel a bit scared. Qingyan didn't like this uncontrollable situation, and secretly made up his mind to pay attention to controlling his killing intent in the future. Chapter 8. Task Completion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The system prompt sounded. The survivor rescue mission has been completed. But at this moment, Qingyan didn't feel too happy in his heart. It wasn't long before the dark side of humanity was exposed before his eyes, dirty, ugly, and without a bottom line. The zombie downstairs should not be able to disperse for a while, so I found a room and went to rest. The next morning, Qingyan was eating the food he brought out when he heard someone knocking on the door. It was strange to hear someone he didn't know here. Who would knock on the door? He went over and opened it. A man and a woman stood at the door and saw Qingyan open it. Perhaps afraid of disturbing Qingyan, they immediately explained, "We have some food here for you to bring over, and we are also here to thank you for saving us." No need, I'm not specifically here to save you. Keep the food for yourself, I have it myself. Also, don't think I'll take you out of here. It seems like you've never killed a zombie before. Taking you out is like committing suicide. Qingyan's words were somewhat heartless but true. The man's face was ugly, while the woman's face showed despair. Now on the balcony, looking at the zombies still gathering downstairs, Qingyan decided not to sit idly by. He picked up his equipment and went downstairs. He first killed some zombies with crossbows on the second floor, and then moved the large table at the front desk of the lobby to the door on the first floor, which happened to block the entrance. After pushing open the door, the zombies rushed in, using the table as a cover and one leg pressed against it. Qingyan used military spikes to constantly stab the zombie's head. Although the table was about to collapse, Qingyan's powerful force pushed the table against the door. Soon, the zombie corpses at the door had piled up into a small hill, which indirectly helped Qingyan block the group of corpses and made him feel more relaxed. After a while, there were too many zombies, still breaking through the obstacle at the door. Qingyan anticipated it and retreated as he fought until the third floor. After chopping off the head of the last zombie, Qingyan sat on the ground, gasping for breath, and finally solved the group of zombies. Although he fought his life, the results were also remarkable, with the zombie killing count reaching 81 out of 100. After returning to the fourth floor, Qingyan didn't pay attention to the monster like gazes from others. He went straight back to his room, took a good shower, and made himself a bowl of extra-large instant noodles with added ingredients. After eating comfortably, he lay on the bed in the luxurious suite. Qingyan began planning to return to his home in 2 days. After so long, Song Qingyan may have been worried to death. The next morning, Qingyan cleared his supplies and ignored the eager gaze of the survivors, walking back home. Passing by the previous supermarket, I saw that there were fewer supplies inside and didn't pay much attention. I picked up some snacks that Song Qingyan liked and left. Just 2 streets away from home, Qingyan was forced to stop because a large wave of zombies suddenly appeared on the road ahead, with hundreds of them blocking the entire street. This was no longer something he could handle now, and he had no choice but to take a detour. I happened to pass by a famous university, which has over 20,000 students on campus. It's easy to imagine what the school is like now, with no intention of entering. Qingyan walked slowly along the road outside the school gymnasium, trying not to cause a commotion of zombies inside the wall. However, things didn't go as planned. Qingyan felt the zombies inside the wall gradually becoming restless. Although he didn't make any sound and was still strange, when he passed through an iron door, the door suddenly opened and several young people, 5 men and 2 women, rushed out. They rushed out of the wall in fear and saw Qingyan, who was fully armed. They instinctively came towards him. At this moment, Qingyan also had an ominous premonition. Sure enough, shortly after these few people rushed out, a group of zombies followed closely and ran towards them with their teeth and claws open. Several young people saw their pale colors behind them and ran even harder towards Qingyan. Seeing that Qingyan's face was unchanged, he visually inspected that the number of zombies was about 12 or 3. He used his crossbow to kill the 3 zombies running in the front, pulled out the fire axe and military spike, and rushed up. He swore, his mother, I met all of them. It didn't take much time, and the remaining zombies were also solved by Qingyan. Unconsciously, Qingyan's close combat strength also improved a lot. Dealing with this number of zombies is not as difficult as it was at the beginning. The few people who were still preparing to escape instinctively turned around and were stunned by Qingyan's divine bravery. It was the first time since the end of the world that they had seen someone killing zombies like chopping melons and vegetables, and everyone stood there in a daze. Quickly, one of the charming-looking girls walked up to Qingyan and introduced herself. Hello, my name is Qingyan, a sophomore student. Thank you for saving us. Can you help us rescue our classmates in school? Many students and teachers were trapped inside the school. Without any hesitation, Qingyan refused and said, What are you joking about? How can I save it alone? I used to pass by here. If it weren't for you suddenly bringing a group of zombies over to my side, I would have left this area by now. Hearing this with some dissatisfaction, the boys behind stopped working. Why are you like this? We don't want to bring the zombies over, and it's a last resort. Besides, why can't you go and help rescue others with such strong combat power? A boy stood up and said, and the girl named Qingyan frowned upon hearing this and secretly said, "It's not good." Sure enough, Qingyan suddenly smiled, with a somewhat sinister smile. If you want to save, you can go save. Not to mention that I just saved your lives, except for that girl, you haven't even said thank you. If I hear this kind of attempt to morally kidnap me again, I will throw him back into the wall. Now no one dares to make a sound anymore. There was nothing to say until they all walked out of this path. Qingyan said, "All right, we'll part ways here. I need to go back." Without looking back, he walked away. As Qingyan walked away, the boy in the crowd who had just accused him kept muttering, "He's really selfish." Qingyan turned around and glared at the boy, saying, "Xiong Kai, if it weren't for you standing on the moral high ground and blaming others, perhaps we could have followed him back to a safe place now. And now we must find a relatively safe shelter to rest as soon as possible. I warn you that if you do such a foolish thing again, you will bear the consequences." At this moment, Qingyan's gaze at Xiong Kai was cold and without any warmth. Leaving aside this side, Qingyan stopped at a gas station for a while to rest and recover his energy. Watching the progress of the task reach 93 out of 100, Qingyan was originally very happy, but was a bit annoyed by those unknown students. While eating the chocolate bars from the supermarket, Qingyan thought of completing the task and immediately returning home. The closer he was to home, the more he missed his little daughter.in.law at home. It could be said that his heart was like an arrow returning home. After solving the food in his hand 3 times, Qingyan picked up a telescope and began to intentionally search for lonely zombies around. He quickly discovered the target, which was a group of zombies near a small grocery store. It seemed that the number was enough for him to complete the task. 20 minutes later, as the system prompt sounded, Qingyan's face showed a long-lost smile. Congratulations to the host for completing 100 zombie killing missions. Congratulations to the host for completing all missions. Reward 9 random attribute points and 3 designable attribute points. Do you want to use them now? No, Qingyan did not choose to use them immediately. It is not yet time to use attribute points, and Qingyan wants to go home quickly. After spending more than an hour, Qingyan finally returned to his own downstairs and knocked lightly on the door. Inside, there came a somewhat panicked voice. "Who is it?" "It's me, Qingyan." Qingyan's answer was calm with a hint of anticipation. Soon, the door opened, and a disheveled woman rushed into Qingyan's arms. Tears in her eyes immediately soaked his chest clothes. Holding the woman into the house, there was no need to confide in each other. The woman with tears in her eyes was suddenly kissed on her lips by Qingyan, and tonight she couldn't avoid a night of intense affection. Chapter 9. Harvesting of Firearms Depot. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Before dawn, Qingyan got up and looked at the delicate face of the woman. He smiled as he walked out of the room and stood in the living room, saying to himself, "System, add 3 specified attribute points to power, and use random attribute points." The tearing sensation that came from his whole body made Qingyan smile bitterly. Although he was ready, at this moment, the pain of tearing his whole body still made Qingyan kneel directly on the ground, his forehead covered with earthworm-like veins, his face blood red, and this time lasted for more than 40 seconds. When the pain slowly disappeared, Qingyan's whole body was covered in pain. Sweat soaked him and he directly lay on the ground. At this point, Qingyan's physical attributes were Strength 20, Agility 14, Stamina 15, Mental Strength 11, and Willpower 15. After a long time, Qingyan dragged his weakened body into the bathroom to take a shower. When Song Qingyan got up, Qingyan ate breakfast with her and shared his experiences with her over the past few days. Listening to her, Song Qingyan was terrified and said, "Brother Yi, don't take such risks in the future, it's too dangerous. If something happens to you, I really don't know what to do." Qingyan held her in his arms and warmed up for a while, making her face turn red before saying anything more. In the next few days, Qingyan stayed at home with Song Qingyan. On the one hand, it was to adapt his body to the physical changes brought about by the sudden increase in attributes. On the other hand, Qingyan summarized his experience of fighting zombies during this period, combined with his body attributes after the sudden increase, and revised his attack methods and combat methods. Qingyan found that although the military spear and fire axe he is currently using are still usable, their lethality is still lacking for him. He needs more violent weapons to fully unleash his explosive power. In addition, the number of crossbows and arrows is not many, and they are not weapons that can be used for a long time. They will still need to be replaced in the future, and the best choice is naturally the gun. This time we went out to investigate. Qingyan also figured out the location of the surrounding street police stations and public security bureaus. It seems that the target for the next outing can be determined. Qingyan talked to Song Qingyan about his thoughts, and Song Qingyan just nodded in agreement without expressing any opinions. She knew that all she needed to do was listen to Qingyan and silently support him without dragging him down. A few more days later, Qingyan's body had returned to its peak state, and he felt better than ever before. He may have to deal with many zombies when going out this time, so Qingyan brought all his crossbow and arrow reserves with him. Following the already explored route, Qingyan quickly saw the street police station. However, at this moment, he also thought of a question. Originally, there shouldn't be many guns in the police station, and when the apocalypse broke out, many police officers must have been dispatched to carry out missions. It's really uncertain how many guns are left in the station. At the entrance of the police station, there were only 4.5 zombies wandering around, but on the road passing by, there were always quite a few zombies. They didn't directly kill them, but instead attracted some zombies to come towards him by making some sounds, and then killed them one by one. Although his current combat power is enough to directly kill and chop vegetables, Qingyan chose a more cautious approach to dealing with these zombies. Apart from the zombies, there are also survivors that he is concerned about. Who knows if he will encounter the sinister survivors secretly attacking him. When Qingyan had arrived at the entrance of the police station, there were already zombies lying on the ground behind him. He observed at the entrance and found no zombies in the hall. He walked in gently and passed by the guard room. Qingyan took away the keys to each room in the building. This time, he did not search each room, and the target was clear, heading straight to the arsenal. As we were approaching the arsenal, we suddenly heard footsteps behind us. Looking back, we found that there were still several familiar faces, including those of the students. However, there were only 4 people left from the original 7. To Qingyan's great surprise, the 2 girls in the original team still survived. On the contrary, the boy was missing 3 people, and the newcomers also saw Qingyan. Chen Fangyun, the leader, had unpredictable eyes and didn't know what was on her mind. She still spoke up and said, "Big brother, we met again. Are you also here to look for supplies?" Qingyan knew that she was trying to test herself, and their target for direction should also be the arsenal. Qingyan sneered, "You don't need to test me anymore. I don't want any supplies from other rooms here, but the arsenal doesn't have your share." There was no intention of discussing with them in his tone. Upon hearing Qingyan's words, Chen Fangyun and her team's expressions became ugly. They took the risk to come here for guns, who cares about those supplies? But due to Qingyan's fighting strength, they couldn't afford to provoke him. In the end, they walked away in a disheveled manner, but when they left, Qingyan didn't notice the resentful eyes of the 4 of them. When it was confirmed that they had left, Qingyan took out the key and opened the door to the arsenal. Qingyan found that the harvest was not bad. 1 Type 54 7.62 mm pistol, 2 Type 92 9 mm pistols, over 107.62mm bullets, over 169mm bullets, 2 bulletproof vests, and a blast helmet. Putting all the equipment into his bag, Qingyan left the police station satisfied, thinking that he could give Song Qingyan a gun to carry with him for self-defense. Thinking about something, Qingyan did not notice 4 sneaky figures following him from afar, which were the 4 people who had just left. Chen Fangyun, along with the other 3, followed Qingyan from a distance and said to the 3 behind him, "Since we can't get the gun, we can follow behind him. On the one hand, we can find his shelter, and on the other hand, we can let him lead us to solve the zombie. When we know the location of his shelter, we will find a place nearby to settle down. When he leaves, we can go and occupy his place, and then use the advantage of the location to drive him out or even ambush and kill him." Hearing her words, the 3 behind all felt a chill in their hearts, thinking that this woman is so terrifying. In a short time, Chen Fanyan's originally beautiful face came up with such a malicious plan. He also had a face full of resentment, and repeatedly eating on Qingyan's hands made the proud Chen Fangyan deeply resent him. After Qingyan returned home, he showed Song Qingyan his gains. Song Qingyan not only wasn't scared by these cold weapons that he wouldn't normally see, but also happily picked up one of the Type 92 and pounded it in his hand. Seeing this situation, Qingyan was somewhat surprised and quickly moved Song Qingyan away from his gun. He told her, "It seems that you really like this gun, so I'll give it to you for safekeeping. Here are the bullets, but I want to remind you not to point the gun at your own person at any time. If the gun goes off, it will be troublesome." Song Qingyan then spat out her tongue and smiled playfully at Qingyan. Chapter 10. Testing. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After handing over the gun to Song Qingyan, he simply taught her how to open the safety, shoot, and aim. Although Qingyan is currently only a theoretical expert, he still knows how to use the gun. As for how to proficiently master the use of guns, Qingyan has not yet thought about it. After all, with the current situation of zombies everywhere, besides saving lives in emergency situations, it plays a more deterrent role, deterring other survivors. On the 3rd day of returning, the power at home was finally cut off, and not long after, the water was also cut off. Although she had told Song Qingyan before, when she really encountered this situation, she was still panicked and a bit at a loss. Fortunately, when Qingyan searched for supplies before, he brought back some candles and stored a lot of drinking water. As for the issue of domestic water, the rainwater collected from the rooftop can now be effective. When Song Qingyan saw these, he finally felt at ease, but Qingyan could imagine that he was starting to become tight here, let alone the living conditions of other survivors. "Qingyan, in the future, I must go out more frequently to collect supplies. Water resources will become even more precious. When I am not at home, you should practice the combat skills I teach you, familiarize yourself with guns, and plan our supplies carefully. You must plan to use them, and all of this will be a blessing for you." I looked at her and said, "It's okay, what kind of hard work is this? Brother Yi, you have already taken all the dangerous things into your own hands, you are the hard work." She even hugged him and gave him a kiss, and Qingyan naturally responded gently. At the same time, across from the building where Qingyan was located, a few pairs of eyes had been staring at the movement here for several days, and no one had come out of the building again, which made the 4 of them anxious. They don't have enough supplies like Qingyan at home. The food and water on the 4 of them can't last for a few days, and the situation is even more difficult because there was a power outage the day before yesterday. There have been several times when they wanted to give up this plan and go back home. But at that moment, they saw the familiar figure reappear and were immediately excited. They knew that their opportunity had finally arrived, but what they didn't know was that just as they were excited, Qingyan, who had just left, felt someone staring at them again. With the improvement of his physique, this ability similar to the 6th sense became increasingly useful. Without looking back, Qingyan walked towards the distance, calmly disappearing into the sight of the 4 of them. Feeling that Qingyan had already walked far away, a few people immediately rushed downstairs. They had already figured it out and went straight to the 6th floor to break through a window on the 1st floor, smashing open the door and occupying the house. Unfortunately, their ideals were full and reality was cruel. Just as they had just come downstairs, selected the window to enter, and were about to break through the window, a figure had already appeared in the alley not far behind them, coldly watching them. He did not immediately appear. Qingyan also wanted to test how Song Qingyan would respond when facing danger through these few people. Qingyan is not worried. The people here will really harm Song Qingyan. With his current strength, he can instantly solve the 4 of them, as long as he is on the side and the situation is always under his control. Following them up to the 6th floor, Qingyan hid at the corner of the stairs and looked at the excited 4 people in the corridor. Their faces looked as if they had successfully occupied the position. They started smashing the door, and before they could even do it twice, Song Qingyan's cold voice came from inside. "Don't smash the door again, otherwise I'll shoot." The sudden voice startled several people, and they realized that there was still someone inside, a woman. The 2 men's faces gradually became more ferocious, and they started smashing the door even more crazily. As for Song Qingyan's warning, they had already taken it as her fierce and cunning. However, 2 gunshots suddenly came from inside the door, and 2 blood flowers bloomed on the shoulder and chest of a man in front of the door. He fell to the ground and didn't move for a while, which not only blinded the few people at the door, but also frightened Qingyan. "Good guy, this girl is quite fierce." Besides the few people at the door, they instinctively hid by the wall and stood tightly against it, not even daring to say anything. Looking at the corpses on the ground, several people were so regretful that their intestines turned blue. If they had known there was still someone in the room, especially someone with a gun, how could they have rushed and roared from the path of seeking death? In this situation, they could only leave quickly. Who knows if the gunfire would have brought the zombies in the distance. But when they turned around and wanted to run, a figure suddenly appeared at the staircase, which was Qingyan. Looking at Qingyan with an expressionless face, they all showed despair. Except for Chen Fangyun, another girl knelt on the ground and begged for mercy, hoping that Qingyan could spare her. The other boy was even more extraordinary, and started kowtowing directly to Qingyan, saying that he could be a cow or a horse for them and only beg for his life. Although standing at the front, Chen Fangyun felt sad in her heart. She unexpectedly didn't beg for mercy, just looked at Qingyan arrogantly. Qingyan ignored the 3 of them and silently pulled out the fire axe from behind, walking towards them inside the room. Song Qingyan stood in front of the door with a gun in both hands, holding it in front of the door. She continued to hold it until her arms could no longer be lifted and trembled before putting it down. However, her eyes remained fixed on the door lock without blinking. Strangely enough, there had been no movement outside the door for a long time since she fired 2 shots at the door. Just as she hesitated whether or not to come forward and take a look, Qingyan's voice came in. "Qingyan, it's me. Put down the gun, they've been solved by me." Upon hearing this sound, Song Qingyan felt relieved and collapsed on the ground. Upon hearing the commotion inside, Qingyan immediately opened the door and walked in. Looking at the woman lying on the ground, Qingyan smiled and gestured to her, saying, "Calm and decisive, this test result has satisfied me very much." After finishing speaking, she walked over and helped her up, sitting on the sofa. Song Qingyan smiled bitterly and said, "I thought I was going to die this time." At this point, Song Qingyan understood what was going on and didn't blame Qingyan. She knew it was Qingyan, but she was still worried about the danger of being alone at home. So she wanted to test her a little, believing that even if she didn't handle it properly, Qingyan would still appear and save her. She looked towards the clean corridor, as if nothing had happened, and she didn't ask about the fate of those people anymore. After repairing the door and reinforcing it again, Qingyan dressed up and greeted Song Qingyan before really leaving. Qingyan believes that after this experience, Song Qingyan will not relax her guard too much at home.